Lovely to have you with us. And we're talking about defence this morning. The new Prime Minister has said that the UK has a cast-iron commitment to spending 2.5% of our national income on defence. But he has stopped short of giving a timeline for when that target will be achieved.
Yeah, so it comes as Sir Keir Starmer joins other NATO leaders for a conference in Washington, marking the 75th anniversary of the alliance. And we're joined now by the new Armed Forces Minister, Luke Pollard. Minister, thank you for joining us here on Breakfast this morning. Hello to you. Well, let's get straight on with the question that people are asking, is this 2.5% commitment? It's been said, Sir Keir Starmer has said this is a commitment, but there's still no timescale. Why not?
Well, we'll be setting out next week a strategic defence review that will look at the threats the UK is facing and the capabilities that we need to meet those threats. It's right that that is the first step, because we've got a commitment to spend 2.5% on GDP, and now it's necessary to set out what we will be spending that on and how we will be spending it. Importantly, I want to send a signal to British industry that this government will be spending more on UK industry than sending contracts abroad for the military equipment that we've seen in the past, supporting jobs and growth across the country. But we live in really difficult times. We know there are threats to our country and our allies. And this defence review will also look at the war in Ukraine and what lessons we need to learn from that to make sure that our fighting forces are ready to deter and, if necessary, defeat any aggressor in the future.
And it's the fact that we are living in dangerous times, as you say, that has made people, security experts, concerned about the fact that there is no timescale. I'm just looking at Lord West, former head of the Navy, also a security minister under the previous Labour government. He's quoted in several of this morning's papers this morning, saying that Labour should outline a timeline throughout the summit to set an example to all European countries, and that delaying spending money by not setting out a plan suggests that there is no money. So lots of people concerned and want to know when this 2.5% is going to happen. Is it going to happen this Parliament?
Well, we are committed to reaching 2.5% on defence. What we spend that money on, though, is really important, how we spend it. That's why the Strategic Defence Review that will be announced next week will look at those threats that we're facing and how we work with our allies. So across the NATO alliance, it's important that every single member state spends 2% of their GDP on defence. In Washington, the Prime Minister and the Defence Secretary are making the case for ambition to spend 2.5%, matching the commitment that the UK has made. But we know from the experience of Ukraine, the advocacy of President Zelensky in Washington over the past 24 hours, that there's a necessity to make sure that we're getting the equipment, the support to Ukraine so they can win now. We know there's a pressing urgency for that, which is why in only the first few days of taking office, the new Defence Secretary has already accelerated the instructions to deliver equipment, the ammunition, the missiles that we have promised Ukraine, to get to them within the next 100 days. It's really important we do that, because we need to continue to support Ukraine until they win, because if Russia wins in Ukraine, they won't stop with Ukraine. They'll continue to threaten NATO states and threaten the United Kingdom. That's why this defence review that we'll set out details of next week is so important, because it will help shape the future size and shape of our armed forces to deter any aggression in the first instance, and then, if necessary, defeat it.
And with respect, that is why people are so concerned about how long this spending commitment is going to take. Can you, here and now, give a commitment that by the end of this parliamentary session, by 2029, that the commitment will be at 2.5%? Can you give that?
Well, the Prime Minister set out that we have this ironclad commitment to get there, but he's also set out, quite rightly, that we will meet that commitment within our fiscal rules. We're not going to pretend, as the previous administration has done, that the money is there when it's not. And we know that the number one mission of this government is to grow our economy. The only way we'll be able to get to 2.5% of GDP on defence, indeed the only way we'll be able to repair and rebuild our health service, our education, prisons, and the damage done across our public sector, is to grow our economy. And defence can play an important role in that. Billions of pounds are spent by the Ministry of Defence every year. I want more of that spent in the UK, supporting apprenticeships to get people into highly good paid jobs with good skills and good opportunities in the future. That is what the Defence Review will set out. That's a necessary first step in how we get to 2.5% of defence of our GDP being spent on defence. More details will be set out next week after the Prime Minister's come back from the NATO summit. But this is an important first step that we're taking here. But that commitment to spend 2.5% is something that was in our manifesto. It is something that every single minister in the MOD is focused on, and indeed something the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are focused on as well. The way we achieve that is by growing our economy.
But still no timescale. Recruitment, this is an issue. Recruitment to the armed forces is a huge issue. You know this, you're from a forces family. What can you do about that? How can you get more people to want to join the armed forces?
Well, there's a lot of people that do want to join the armed forces. And what we know is about 80% of those people that have applied to join the Army, Navy and the Air Force drop out before they reach their training establishment because of the length of time it takes to join, sometimes over a year from the moment they sign on to arriving at their training establishment. That's far too long. We need to make sure that we are, as a country, recruiting the very best to our armed forces and, importantly, retaining them. So we've already started a piece of work looking at recruitment. How do we make that faster and better, but also how we retain people? And we know that over the last 14 years, morale has been falling in our armed forces. I know that there is military accommodation right across our country that we're asking our service personnel and their families to live in that have black mold in bedrooms, leaky roofs, broken boilers. That's not good enough. And so that's why one of our commitments we've made as a new government is to renew the contract between the nation and those who serve. So it's not just about the kit and equipment, the capabilities that I spoke about at the start of this interview. That's important. We have to make sure that we're offering those people who serve our nation in uniform the very best to not only recruit well, but to stay in our armed forces, and for those people who leave to be able to return to our armed forces, because the only way we deter aggression is with people and with the equipment to go along with it. And we can have all the equipment we want. If we haven't got the people, that's not going to work. And that's why a people-focused approach to make sure we're recruiting the best and keeping them is at the heart of our defence policy as well.
You will be getting used to your new role, your new office, your new desk. What's the very top of your agenda this week?
This week, it's making sure that the investment and support is going to Ukraine. We know that from the appalling attack that we saw a few days ago on the Children's Hospital in Kyiv, that civilians are dying on a daily basis in Ukraine because of Putin's illegal war. We want to accelerate the delivery of support. That's why the Defence Secretary has set out plans to make sure that the Brimstone missiles, the ammunition, the new maritime attack boats that we promised Ukraine get there faster. Because President Zelensky doesn't have time on his side here. If we want to support Ukraine, we have to make sure they're getting the equipment so they can win. And that means getting equipment there faster, encouraging more of our allies to support that effort. And that has to be our early priority, as well as setting out the parameters for the defence review that we'll be announcing next week to make sure UK forces are in the right shape to match the challenges that we're facing in these more uncertain times.
Armed Forces Minister Luke Pollard, thank you.
Thank you.